for it. So you can also note if I got a bright area up here, I continue that bright area all the way through the design. So the light's hitting it. If you're taking a piece of metal and you're turning it back and forth, you can see that it's going to go. It's not going to be bright here, dark here, bright here, dark here. It's going to be consistent throughout the whole pattern. I'm going to go ahead and switch over to a silver color. I'm going to spray silver over white areas. I'm going to spray it over the black. When I spray the silver over the white areas, it's going to be hard to kind of see it, but after this is cleared and it hits the sunlight, you'll be able to see it and you'll totally be able to tell what I'm doing here as I'm spraying it. Where I left some of these dark areas where I didn't spray any white, as I spray the silver over it, I'm just kind of misting over it, and it's basically creating a darker silver. I'm letting some of the black show through from my surface. This gives us a lot of dimension, a lot of depth to it. I want to make sure I got paint, some sort of paint over this whole inside area. I'm going to switch to some blue now, and I'm going to use this blue as just accents and basically bring a little bit of color into it. And I'm going to mist this in here, just in some spots, just to help bring a little bit of life to it, a little bit of color. And you could use brown, you could use red. If I was doing this on a red surface, I would be using red in here instead of blue. But since on a black, I'm just going to go ahead and use. On my last color, I'm going to go ahead and switch back to the white and spray out some of the blue that was in there. And I'm just going to go through some sections and go over the metal flake. This is where I want my brightest areas to be. It's good to step back every once in a while, take a look at what you got, look at it at different angles, different light. But that's basically all you have to do for the inside part. Spray it. You don't have to get it too heavy, you don't have to get it too thick. Once we're done with this, we're going to peel off all our bevel, and I'm going to show you how to do your bevel. Both sets of this tape off, being real careful as you're doing it. One thing you want to remember when you're peeling this up, before you start to peel it, you want to make sure the paint is completely dry. If you start peeling it up and you hit it, you're going to be causing a lot more headache for yourself and a lot of touch up. So just make sure it's dry before you start peeling it. Once we got all the perimeter of our bevel, all this tape pulled off, I want to kind of go through it, make sure that our initial paper that we got, the sticky paper, is down flat. I want to check for any areas that are lifted up so you don't have any blow-throughs up underneath. At this point, we're going to start spraying our outer bevel. I'm going to use the same colors as I used in the inside. I'm going to start off with the white. Then we're going to go to silver, and then we're going to go to the blue. Now I'm going to let my black, a lot of this black, show through. As I'm spraying this, I'm directing my paint to the edge of this sticky paper. I'm not spraying into our center of our bevel. I'm trying to keep it hard on the edge and lighten it up as I get towards the center. This way you don't end up with crisscrosses in here. I'm spraying just a little bit of paint at a time too. If you notice, I'm not spraying a lot of paint down. I'm just putting just a little bit down. More at this point, fading it off as I come in. Another thing that'll help when you're spraying this stuff is the direction of your airbrush. So if you're pointing in, you got to remember your overspray is going into the design. So if you don't want a lot of overspray or any overspray, you point it away from the design and just work on that edge. So if I want a really bright spot right there on that edge, I'm going to point my airbrush away from the center of my design. Right now I'm not worrying about my corners. I'm just trying to get a little bit of paint, brighter in some areas, duller in others, throughout my whole bevel here. Now I'm going to switch over to the silver. I'm going to do the same thing with the silver. I'm going to do the same thing with the blue, only less of the blue, and then I'm going to come back and I'm going to show you how to do the corners of your bevel. I always like to test it off my surface, not on my design. Before I start spraying, I always come over to the edge, test it, make sure I don't got any leftover paint sitting in there, so when I switch to silver, all of a sudden it came out white and I didn't want white. So you just come over off to the side, test it, make sure it's working, then go into your design. I'm just basically getting a lot of overspray on this is all I'm doing right now. I just want a little bit of silver to give it that metallic look. Okay, next I'm just going to add a little bit of blue. Just to bring a little bit of color into it. Again, I'm just misting this right on the edges, trying to focus on the edge, not the bevel, the inner bevel. I'm concentrating on the outer part of the bevel. What we're going to do next is I'm going to show you how to do the corners of the bevels to give it that three-dimensional look. And I just like to take vanilla envelope, some scissors, and just cut a basic curve on it, like a little hill. And this is what I'm going to use for my template. Just something like this, okay? If I don't get the right angle, I can recut it. It's inexpensive. I just hold it up, spray it. I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So what we're going to do at this point is I'm going to take my stencil that I just cut, and we'll go ahead and start on this corner over here. I am going to concentrate on the tips, all the tips of my bevels, and we want to bring it from point A to point B. I'm not really worried about the inner part of this bevel. It's the outside top part that I want to concentrate on. So, test my paint. I'm going to be spraying white. Line up my stencil, and I'm paying attention to where the bottom of my point is. And I kind of mark that with my finger so I know where I'm at. And as I spray, as I get close to my finger, I stop spraying. Spray the top part. As I get down toward my finger, as I stop. Smooth it out, and I got myself a hard edge there. Now I'm going to do that on all of them. So I got a curve that goes like that, so I look for a curve on my stencil that I made. I just want to mention when I'm spraying my bevels that I always think that where's my top and where's my bottom. I usually spray the top part of the bevel my lighter color, so when you're looking at it you got that piece of metal and the light's hitting it from the top. So the bottom piece is the darker, the top piece is the lighter piece. Now that I've looked over everything, I got it looking the way I want it, okay? Now we're going to peel all the sticky paper off and get a good look at what this looks like. So when you're peeling this off, you just want to make sure that you're not touching your artwork up all. You want to try to stay off of that and just peel your design off. I like to do sometimes is I like to get my X-Acto blade just so that I can get part of it up, and then I start peeling. Now that we got our basic bevel down, got our colors in, I'm going to go ahead and throw some highlights in. I'm just going to use white and get in it close, and then I'll back off on it. Give it nice little highlights in certain areas. I always like to have a piece of paper or something I can use. Test my airbrush first, make sure it's not spitting or whatever it's doing. So I got some white in here. My airbrush is working fine. I'm going to pick the areas I want to do some highlights. I'm going to get in it pretty close, and then you're going to back it off while it's still spraying. Okay, as I'm doing this, if you notice, I'm putting a highlight on the top bevel and a highlight on the bottom bevel. So you want to try to give it that three-dimensional look. This helps it. I'm just going to randomly do this throughout the whole thing. Try not to put too many in there, it gets too cluttered. This is also a good way to hide any flaws that you may have. Sometimes you want to throw a couple of them right next to each other. Just kind of break it up a little bit. Now I got my bevel all painted, got my highlights on it. I'm going to throw some smoke colored, some skulls inside the smoke. I'm going to show you how to do that. I'm going to use white, silver, gold, some blues, and black for this process. I'm going to cut me a stencil just with my scissors and some paper, and we'll get her done. What I'm doing is I'm just taking basic vanilla envelope, and I'm going to cut some random circles and corners out of this. And this is what I'm going to use for my stencil. And I'm just randomly cutting different shapes that I'm going to use. And since we're doing kind of a smoky color, you're going to have some tight circles, and you can just pretty much cut anything you want. You can buy some stencils that are pre-made. I just like to cut it. It's cheap, it's fast, and you can change it out each time. And as you're spraying this, if the stencil gets too wet, you just cut yourself another one. This is all I'm going to use. I can actually use both pieces if I want to. What we're going to do next is we're going to do some smoke with some skulls in it. We're going to use the same technique you would use similar to doing real fire. I cut my stencil, so I'm going to start with white. I'm going to start with the smoke coming up, and I'm going to show you how to do some skulls in here and then smoke it off. I'm going to use white, silver, gold, blue,